I read Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And for those of you who have heard of that book or read it yourself, it really needs no introduction. But to those of you who haven't heard of it, I'm going to talk about it. And there are some pretty extreme themes, a lot of racism, like really bad racism, and including essay involving children and just gruesome deaths, gruesome murders, animal murders. So I guess this is your formal warning right now that that's kind of what the book is all about. I'm not going to do a video analysis about it. Back in January, I made a video about how I read No Country for Old Men, and it's basically I'm just talking about I read it and this was my experience reading it and this is how I felt and whether or not I recommend it, which for No Country for Old Men, I'm like, yeah, I recommend it. It's a great book. But for this book, I don't know how much I can recommend it just because of the events that take place. So, with all that being said, I'll just jump right into it. I read Blood Meridian, and it's really a very heartbreaking and soul wrenching and sickening book. I mean, like, I don't know how else to put it. There's the author, Cormac McCarthy, there's no denying that he's a brilliant writer and he's really good at it. And just to go off on a separate tangent, the author's really, really good at giving things such detail that make you feel like you're really there and like you feel anxious and on the edge of your seat, like you can't wait to see what happens next. But he also does a really good job at implying things and then just with all the context built up, he doesn't even need to say what happens because you deep down after reading all this, you know what happened. And I think that's really powerful too because you could be great at details but also to be great at making the reader imply what you want them to imply. That's special, right? After I read the book, I'm not going to lie, I felt really pointless and I felt like why did I read this book? There's no reason to have even written it. It feels like just really edgy and dark for seemingly no reason. And that was my initial reaction. I did some further research. I watched some other analysis videos about it on YouTube. And then I understood that the book is actually pretty historically accurate. So it takes place in the 1800s, and you're following along with this gang led by John Joel Glanton, who was a real person. Not that everything that happened was real events, but it's very historically accurate that like it might as like it could have happened. And they're headhunters. Basically, they go around and they scalp Apaches and turn the scalps in for money that the Mexican government is paying them. So, I mean, that alone is a pretty horrific thing to wrap your mind around, but that is something that happened in the 1800s. So, to write a book about it is it's well, books just to take a step back, books are so subjective. You decide what lens you're going to read it from. You could read it and be like, Cormac McCarthy was probably just a god awful person with a black, dark, cold, hard rock of a heart. And that's why he decided to write this. And you know what? You would be right in thinking that because, like I said, it's subjective. So, whatever you take away from the book is your truth about that book. And that's what makes reading so special. And that is how I originally thought. Until when you realize it's historically accurate, it does a couple things for you. Because there are quite a few scenes where Cormac McCarthy goes into a bit of detail explaining how certain people die. And that, at face value, can be taken as really dark and exploitive. But when you think about it, we hear about tragedies all throughout history, and it always comes up with a number. Like, this many people died, this many people were injured. It's always a number, right? Though your heart can go out to what happened, it still dehumanizes the victims. At least it kind of does to some extent when they're just grouped into this big number. So for Cormac McCarthy to write about how a singular person dies is really powerful because it adds the importance to this human being that was always there. And I can I'm thinking of just this one scene in particular where an older woman was killed just for no reason at all. Well, there was a reason, but I won't give it away. It's a spoiler, and it's a horrible and heart-wrenching reason, but she's murdered, and to read that, it makes you realize that she's not a number. Like, she's a real woman who lived a life, and now she dies this horrible death, and she's just going to be added to the books as a number, but she's a real person with a real name. And I think that's what's so powerful about the book is even though there's these really gruesome and violent scenes, just to recognize that each individual person is a person and not a number. Even though it's fictional. It's a fictional book, but like I said, it's pretty dang historically accurate. It's not a historical record, but what happens in the book could have very well happened. So I just wanted to talk about that too, because like I said, when I first read it, I just felt like this was pointless. I can't believe I wasted 2 months reading this book, because admittedly, I'm embarrassed. It took me 2 months to read it, but I seriously underestimated just how exhausting and intense it would be to read that book. The book follows along this character called the Kid. Literally, he has no name, which is really ironic after I go on this whole tangent about how you're adding this depth to a singular person, and then meanwhile the character you follow along the whole time, you never get his name. His name is literally the Kid, and then at the end of the book, as he grows up, he's the man. It's really interesting, and like I said, this is just a video talking about the fact that I read it. This is not a deep analysis, but there's very interesting things to say about the Kid, because just like how you read the book with whatever lens you decide to put on it, the Kid is the same way, where I mean, he's really not explained in depth. Like these other characters, you know who they are. It's pretty blatant. Meanwhile, the Kid, you can decide as you read along to read him as this nonchalant, doesn't care what happens, or he really is sympathetic, or he is a monster like everyone else. Like you kind of get to decide that, especially because there are a lot of times where he doesn't specifically take part in the evil deeds that this gang he follows along with takes part in. He doesn't explicitly do the things that they do, but he's still following along with them. So that's kind of interesting to take away from it. And speaking of the Kid, I just want to say at the very end of the book, I was not into what happened. I was not into it at all. So anyway, that's the character that you're following along with the book. But really, you could argue the main character is Judge Holden. Now, the judge is a character there's a chance people out there haven't even heard of Blood Meridian, but you've heard of the judge as being one of the like most ruthless, heartless, fictional villains out there to have ever been written. And I would say he's up there. He's definitely up there. There's so much to be said about his character. I'll point out what's most fascinating. So, yes, he is very violent. There's a scene where he buys these puppies off of a kid just so that he can throw them off of a bridge into a body of water. And that's just one instance. He plays the fiddle, he dances. He does speak every language that is brought up in the book. He seems to be highly intelligent mastermind. And again, just doing evil things for no reason except for I guess kind of to get a laugh. It's pretty obvious that the judge is entertained by evil things that happen, and it shows that explicitly in one of the first scenes he's shown in, which I actually probably my favorite scene in the whole book is one of the first. It's in the first couple pages where the kid goes into this tent in this town where it's been raining for a long time, and there's this man preaching on a box, and the judge comes in, and I don't even want to give away what happens next because it's a phenomenal scene. That alone, you don't even know where it ends up, and I just love it. It shows how the judge is going to be the entire book. But like I said, he seems to be entertained by everything, really everything that happens. Like he's just chasing the thrill almost, or he doesn't even need to chase it. He's just thrilled by what happens because he has deemed that the violence going on around him is what should be normal and what should be made of life. And the judge also, a huge part of his character is there's so many scenes where literally it's just a couple pages long of him going on this long rant. And it pertains to what's going on in the book. It pertains to the gang and what they've been doing and what they've been up to or what they've witnessed. My favorite part about the tangents, too, is most of the time the people around him just kind of reply with, okay, all right, that's enough. And that I kind of really love, especially at the end when the judge is talking to the man who was once the kid, but now the man, in a bar, and the judge goes on this whole long tangent. The man is basically like, shut up, and leaves. And I love that, because if I interacted with the judge, that is how I would be as well. Because I will not lie. I'm going to be totally honest. Maybe I shouldn't be. Kind of boring. Like, I understand that he's talking about something that's supposed to be profound and deep. Still kind of boring. I cannot deny. I don't care if that makes me sound unintelligent. I'm wearing a $13 Spirit Halloween cowboy hat. I don't care. Kind of boring. Except when you listen to video analysis and you hear what other people have to say to put it in context, you're like, oh, that makes more sense. And I have to say also, I'm definitely planning on rereading the book again in the future. I think it's one of those books where probably every time you read it, you get something new out of it. It's really fascinating and phenomenal in that way. Going back to the judge and his character, one of my favorite things about him, even though he's the worst, is that his physical appearance, so epic is the best way to put it. He is 6 foot, 7 foot something. He's a giant. He's huge. He's not well built. He's described as being kind of like flabby, I believe. Not that he's fat, but he's very large. He's just like a giant. Pale white skin. People say that he's an albino, which that would make sense. Pale white skin, not a single hair on his body. No hair anywhere. No hair, no eyebrows, no hair at all. That image alone is terrifying. To say that he's the nicest person in the world, but he looks like that, I would not believe you. Like, just the way that he looks makes him a villain. That alone. His appearance alone would make him a villain. The crazy thing about it, too, is he's strong. He's got immense strength. He crushes, in the book, a horse's head with a giant rock. I mean, just knowing all that about him adds further to Cormac McCarthy's brilliant writing techniques and helping the reader be able to imply what he wants the reader to imply. So there's things that happen, like I say, that isn't explicit, but you can imply it just knowing the judge's character. Like I said, he's probably the main character, even though I guess you could argue the kid is really the main character all the way from the beginning. But I mean, every time the judge is brought up, you're on the edge of your seat, anxious to know what happens next. It's great. It is great, despite how evil he is. But what I love about his physical appearance is he's also in multiple times described as being a giant baby. And it reminds me of in a video game when you have like a default character that you customize. So they start out, say, completely pale and completely hairless. And then you decide what hair they have, the color hair, you decide all their attributes and everything. I kind of really like the idea. He's almost like comparable to a PNG background, like the white and gray tile squares. That's what I think of. And I think that's pretty great too, because then in a way, I mean, he's an anomaly within himself because he's never eating or drinking or sleeping. And the book says that he can never die, or he says he can never die, but that's what's implied of him. Like, he himself is an anomaly, and he's written in a way that still kind of makes him look like a human, like he could be real, but he can't be real. You could go on and on talking about him. There's a lot to say. Like I said before, when I first read the book, it felt pretty pointless, and there was no reason to have written the book. And another part of me that felt that way felt also like the judge was almost a self-inserted character, so that the whole story was an excuse for the author to just share his opinions through Judge Holden's long tangents that he goes on. And that's so irritating. But I mean, so many stories do that, right? Where the author has the self-inserted character used exclusively so that they can share their opinion or share what they think. Which, like I said, I thought that at first, but then when I sat with the book for a little longer, I did further research. It really shows more so how the judge was kind of made for the gruesomeness and the violence of the world that he exists in. Because, I mean, the book is its own separate world, and the judge was made just for that world, as if he was just born, as he's frequently described as being a large child. I mean, there's so much to break down and take apart about his character, but it's honestly, it's nothing like I've ever read or heard of before. You know, with all that being said, I kind of have to wrap it up because I have somewhere to be. Reading this book was very humbling, especially thinking about the fact that literally there are university, like college classes that talk solely about Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. I mean, there's so much to break down and pick apart about the book, and I would love to watch more people do it, not do it myself because I'm lazy like that. I recommend Windigood's video because he goes through the entire story of the book, so then you don't even have to read it if you don't want to. And he comes up with good ideas, I think, and he talks about other people's good ideas about the book, including people usually believe in the theory that Judge Holden is either the devil or a representation of the devil, and there's a lot to support that throughout the book. And I want to believe that. I also don't want to believe that. I would recommend the book if you think that you can handle it. If any part of you is like, sounds kind of intimidating, I would not recommend it, even though great book. And I can't wait to read, eventually I'm going to read The Road as well by Cormac McCarthy, just because, I mean, I'm on this binge, so, but before then I have some other books to get through. And with all that being said,